The Masked Maiden, an ode to the fox and the crow by Aesop. The maiden lived alone at the edge of the forest. Her cottage leaned against the trees like an old friend, its roof furred with moss, its windows shadowed by branches. Smoke rose faintly from the chimney, the smell of sage drifting into the air. She seldom left except to forage, tend the animals, or tend to the wards along the border paths. Her mother had been the last of their line before her. On her deathbed, she had pressed the family's relic into her daughter's hands, a silver mask etched with curling vines. "Never walk the woods without it," her mother whispered. The woods cage something that can never be released. It is our bloodline's duty to guard, and the mask will guard you in turn. One evening, a knock rattled her door. She opened it to find a man in a brown coat, his hat pressed to his chest. He introduced himself as a contractor, sent to survey the forest. His voice was calm, even apologetic, but his meaning was sharp. The land was valuable, and his company intended to harvest its trees. Her answer was swift, no. He accepted the refusal with a courteous nod and left, but he came back the next day. His smile was gentler, his voice measured. "I'm only here because my employer insists," he said. "I mean no harm." She hesitated. The silence of the cottage pressed around her. At last, she stepped aside. "Come in, then. Share tea with me." Her mother's words whispered through her mind. "Trust those you may share tea with." But the man shook his head, almost too quickly. "No, I wouldn't dare intrude. I should be on my way." Something in his refusal unsettled her. He looked almost grateful not to cross the threshold. Then outside, she offered, studying him. "There's a table in my garden." At that, his smile steadied. "If you insist." As they sat in the garden, he folded his hands around the cup. "You see," he began, voice calm, persuasive, "it isn't all destruction. Selective cutting can actually help the woods flourish. Clearing the old and the weak gives light to the young. The forest breathes better that way." She listened, her brow furrowed. For a heartbeat, she wavered. The words sounded almost reasonable. But the mask cooled against her skin, reminding her of duty. "No," she said at last. "The forest stands as it is." He nodded, lips curving in a mild smile. "I understand, truly. Then may I return, not to speak of work, but as a friend." Loneliness pressed heavy on her, and his eyes seemed gentle. She hesitated, then inclined her head. "Yes, you may." The weeks that followed brought him back again and again. They walked the woods together, at first with distance between them, then closer. His words were always flattering, never coarse. He admired her poise, her knowledge of plants, her voice when she read aloud from her mother's grimoire. Her heart, long starved of company, began to soften. One afternoon, she confessed a grief. She had lost her mother's sapphire ring, the one keepsake she had besides the mask. He listened gravely. "A tragedy," he murmured, But treasures have a way of returning when least expected. Not long after, he stopped her on the forest path. From his pocket, he drew a velvet pouch, and inside lay a sapphire ring. Her breath caught. It was not the same, but the stone glowed the same blue. She touched it with trembling fingers. "It isn't hers," he admitted, "but I wanted to give you something worthy of you." Her defenses crumbled. Loneliness weighed heavy, and his thoughtfulness seemed to lift it. Their walks grew longer, their words more intimate. But he never stepped foot in her cottage, despite the invitation. One twilight, he lingered near her, voice low. "You are beautiful," he said, as his hand pushed a stray lock of hair from her masked face. But the mask, his hand hovered near her cheek. "Even a glimpse would be enough, just enough to kiss you." The forest seemed hushed, waiting. For years, she and her ancestors had hidden their faces. Her mother had taught her to trust the mask more than her own heart. But here was someone who had been patient, kind, who had sat with her over tea, and never once forced his way inside. A person who had watered her lonely heart with kindness. Her hand rose, trembling. Slowly, she lifted the mask. What she saw was not a man, or a person of any kind. The face that grinned at her was raw and shifting. Eyes pits of fire, teeth jagged and glass-like. She gasped and tried to pull her mask down, but too late. With a clawed hand, he knocked the mask away, crushing it under one of his monstrous claws. Her mouth opened to scream, and the forest answered. Shadows poured into her throat, spirits writhing and whispering as they filled her body. She gagged as she tried to breathe. Her limbs jerked, her eyes glazed over, her voice became 100 voices speaking at once. She staggered, hollowed out, a puppet of the very woods she had sworn to guard. The demon only smiled and twisted his heel, crushing any remnants of the mask into the dirt. Days later, the forest groaned beneath the roar of engines. Steel machines bit into the trees, felling giants that had stood for centuries. And in the shadows of the tree line, a figure stood watching. A maiden with pale, vacant eyes, her movements stiff, her mouth muttering in voices not her own. The guardian of the forest was gone, and the destroyers had come. Moral of the story: beware the tongue that flatters. Its sweetness hides teeth meant to devour.